Luke Magnin, Combined Ratio Solutions. I am outside of our office right now. I was inside trying to figure out what I was going to say. I just wrote this article. I'll link it into the show notes, and the article was about how to add credibility as an IT professional working for an insurance carrier. And I couldn't get one bit of work done because it is so loud. Let me show you. So here you can see they're building things. They're building something here. They're building something up there, and there we are. That's my window right there. We're right in the middle. And this gave me an idea. What better way to talk about how to build credibility than to talk about building things. I love building things for an insurance company. Let's spend a little bit of time talking about what I see the big problem there. It's too hard to build stuff. Let me ask a question to all of you out there working in carrier IT. How much trouble would you have trying to build something new in your organization? Now, I'm not talking about the fingers on keyboards, actual figuring out what to build and then doing the development work to build it. I'm talking about all the other parts. The enterprise architecture, the database, infrastructure groups, shared services group, enterprise publishing, procurement, security. How big of a fight would you have on your hands if you just wanted to go off, spend a little bit of time, and build something? Let's use a hypothetical example, bring this to light a little bit. Say that somebody on the business side was interested in doing something to improve how they record and get insight out of agent feedback, right? You're at a carrier, there's a sales and marketing team, they do agency visits all year long. This is someone that says, hey, we're getting good information out of them, but we're not doing enough to, we're not turning that information into knowledge that's generating change. Seems like a reasonable problem to me. So let's assume upon hearing this, you want to build something new. You want agents to be able to go into meetings. They would leverage a tool like Otter AI to record those meetings. That would pull out sort of key phrases and action items. You'd want all of these meetings to go into a knowledge base, and then you'd want something so that that knowledge base could synthesize that information. On a regular basis, it could publish sort of trends that are, this is what we're hearing, to make it easier to have sort of a consolidated voice of the agent that then you could take into your decision making about how to make it easier to work with agents. So on the cost side, I think you could build that for peanuts. I think that there are fantastic tools already out there, and we're just sort of pulling them together and connecting a few dots. On the benefit side, I think that you could make a reasonable case that you could drive some extra fraction of a percentage of additional premium based on being more able to take what agents actually want and give it to them so that they're driving a little bit more business through your company. Okay? So I think that from a cost benefit scenario, this would be reasonable. For the sake of argument, let's assume that over 3 years, this could generate an additional $250,000 a year in premium. And then from a cost perspective, I think that maybe $10,000 over that same 3 years is pretty reasonable. That's sort of an initial build out, and then the costs and subscriptions of running it. Taking that into account, it looks like a pretty reasonable business case to me. It looks like something that somebody would stand up and say, hey, I want to do this. And so the final assumption, let's assume you've got that person. Let's assume that your business stakeholder wants to do this project. They're excited about it. They are a cheerleader for this little bit of innovation that you could deliver. Now, be honest. If you were to sign up for this project, how long would the line of people at your desk be who wanted to either stop you in your tracks or who wanted to add a whole bunch of additional stuff, be it scope or processes or checkpoints? How long would that line of people be? And so hypothetically, I mean, you guys know your organizations better, but like, what have I seen? I bet you'd have corporate security there that would want to know a whole heck of a lot about the third-party tool. Maybe there are security audits there, information protection would be in there somehow. I think that you'd have infrastructure people that would need to understand not only sort of how they integrate it, but how does this sort of work with the SDLC and our different environments. You'd have all of that work. You'd have enterprise architecture that would want to make sure that, hey, this tool is to our corporate standards. This is the tool of choice for this type of work. They'd want to look at all the other projects and make sure no one else is doing sort of the same thing with a different tool or doing this in a bad way. You'd have all sorts of shared services organizations who'd want to control what they see as their little piece of this. For example, maybe you have a content management group that has SharePoint and manages SharePoint. Would they want to go in and make sure you were using SharePoint, using it the right way, delivering it on the SharePoint farm, whatever the heck those people would care about? And then, God help you, is procurement have to get involved in this? Are they going to need to insist that you go out to market, get quotes from a whole bunch of people? Are they going to negotiate and contract this whole thing into oblivion? There are just lots and lots of people whose job it is, people with the best intentions, but whose job it is to slow you down, to stop you, and to say, hey, have you thought of that? You got to do this. You need permission from that person. The truth is, there's a culture of conservatism that is overtaking too many insurance IT organizations. Every one of those people I mentioned before has the best intentions in heart. They want to make things better. They think that they're making things better. But the truth is that the vectors that they are trying to protect you from aren't very likely vectors. And the exposure, if something bad did happen, isn't very high. The risks there aren't too high. And while everybody might want you to do one little thing just to help prevent something that probably won't happen, but maybe, and in each thing you could look at individually and say, that looks reasonable, once you start stacking thing after thing after thing that you need to do just to do work, just to do this little piece of innovation and to make the business work, once you start looking at all these additional people that you need to satisfy to do that, I think it quickly becomes untenable. You've got 6 different internal stakeholders, not related to the business case, just sort of protecting you from yourself, that all need to be satisfied. And just thinking about going through the process with each of them, making sure that everybody feels good about this, getting all the right forms checked and I's dotted and T's crossed, I think it sounds exhausting. And I think it very quickly becomes easier to just say to your business stakeholder who had this great innovative idea, nah, we can't do it. It'd be too expensive. It'd take too long. Just think about the management layer that you would need to put into place in order to satisfy all of these people. I think you'd take your $10,000 project, and quickly you'd find that instead of costing $10,000 and taking 6 weeks, it costs $150,000 and it takes 6 months. And I think that all of these little check marks, all of these internal stakeholders who are protecting you from yourself, they are what's ultimately driving a culture in insurance carrier technology that is a culture that I can't deliver anything small, that I can't have quick wins, that I can't be scrappy. So what ends up happening is ultimately the only projects that your IT organization has an appetite for are big, giant, complex projects. Projects so big that all the concerns that I mentioned earlier are just a small portion of those, that this project was going to be so complex and take so long regardless, that these things make sense. They just sort of fit right in there. And when you pin all your hopes to sort of these big projects, it means you're pinning your organization's reputation and success on whether or not you can meet the cost benefits that come with these big projects. And honestly, this sounds to me like the last decade of insurance technology, and I'm not so sure that that's been working very well. I think that everyone would stand up and say, yes, we need more smaller projects, fewer big projects. We need sort of to see constant progress, lots of deliverables to production. We need to de-risk ourselves because these big projects are too expensive, take too long, and honestly, they rarely deliver what we think they should deliver. Everyone, I think, would be shaking their head in agreement. But have you built a culture that lets you actually do that type of work, that lets you build these sort of small things? That, I think, is the direction that we need to move in here as we sort of move into this new decade. We need to move into a culture of building things, a culture of delivery. We need to not be so conservative. We need to take risks. We need to allow ourselves to fail. We need to engage our stakeholders directly. When they have ideas, we should provide scrappy ways to make those happen. We should be out there trying to do things faster and cheaper. We should provide a level of air cover over analysts and developers, who are the only people that are really doing the real work that gets this stuff out into production. We need to provide more air cover to them so that they can get out there, work quickly, do their things, and if there are problems, if there are issues, that they're not sort of held to the wall and stoned to death about it, that they feel like they can fail and still stand up and try again. And overall, we just need to put No, I'm going to stop that. I was going to say something about processes and procedures, but that's ridiculous. We need to look at the processes and procedures in place right now, and we need to take a pruning knife. Is a pruning knife a thing? We need to take what would you take? A scalpel. Yes. We need to look at the processes and procedures that are in place right now, and we need to take a scalpel to them. We need to streamline this whole thing. At the end of the day, IT is the only people in an insurance organization with the ability to build, with the ability to create, not something intangible, like something real. We should be encouraging them to create. Everyone should be constantly listening to business people and their crazy ideas and building things to drive small changes to insurers' combined ratios. Because at the end of the day, isn't that all that matters? Growing premium, reducing expenses, managing losses. Instead of trying to do one thing that has a huge impact on one or more of these, let's do 20 things that does a minor impact on these 3 items. Let's do more. Let's build great big things. Let's take business complexity and implement them however we can. Let's move the needle and let the chips fall where they may.